The Breaking Point ambassador Sarah Chen adjusted her formal diplomatic jacket as she walked through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Unity Station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, serving as the meeting ground for the 17-member species of the Galactic Council. For 150 years, humanity had been part of this grand alliance, contributing technology, expertise, and solutions to countless galactic problems. Today would mark either a new chapter in human-alien relations or the end of everything they had built together. The council chamber stretched before her like a vast amphitheater. Each species had their designated section, elevated platforms arranged in a circle around the central speaking area. Sarah had stood in that center hundreds of times before, but today felt different. The weight of her briefcase seemed heavier, containing what might be humanity's final proposals for equal representation and fair treatment. The Zephyrians entered first, their tall, elegant forms gliding across the polished floor. Their leader, High Counselor Veltar, had served for over 3 centuries. Behind him came the crystalline Quartzians, their bodies refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The insectoid hive mind representatives skittered in next, followed by the aquatic tide runners in their mobile water tanks. Sarah watched each delegation take their elevated positions, literally looking down on the speaking floor where she would soon stand. The symbolism was not lost on her. Despite humanity's contributions to galactic civilization, they were still treated as the newcomers, the junior partners who should be grateful for inclusion. The session began with the traditional harmony chant, performed in 17 different languages simultaneously. Sarah participated, though the irony of singing about unity while being systematically excluded from important decisions made her stomach turn. When the chant ended, High Counselor Veltar's voice echoed through the chamber. "We gather today to address the persistent request from the human delegation. Ambassador Chen, you may present your species' concerns." Sarah stepped forward, activating her holographic display. Charts and statistics filled the air around her, showing humanity's contributions over the past century and a half. Honored Council members, I come before you today not as a supplicant but as a partner seeking equal treatment. For 150 years, humans have served this alliance faithfully. She gestured to the first hologram. When the Zephyrian worlds faced the Great Plague 40 years ago, human medical researchers developed the cure in just 6 months. We shared it freely, asking for nothing in return except continued friendship. The display shifted to show engineering, schematics. When the Quartzian homeworld's core began destabilizing, human engineers designed the stabilization matrix that saved 6 billion lives. Again, we shared this technology without compensation. More images flowed past trade statistics, technological innovations, diplomatic solutions to border disputes, and military strategies that had prevented 3 major wars. In every crisis, humanity has answered the call. We have given our knowledge, our resources, and often our lives for the greater good of the galaxy. Sarah paused, letting the weight of the evidence settle over the chamber. Yet despite these contributions, humans remain excluded from the High Command. Our colonies receive the smallest resource allocations. Our scientists are denied access to advanced research facilities. Our merchants face discriminatory trade practices. She looked up at the elevated platforms, meeting the eyes of delegates who had benefited directly from human innovation. We ask only for what we have earned: equal representation and fair treatment. We propose the creation of 3 additional seats on the High Command, proportional to our contributions and population. The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in dismissive sounds. The hive mind's chittering translated as laughter through the universal translators. Counselor Veltar's expression remained neutral, but his tone carried centuries of condescension. Ambassador Chen, your species' enthusiasm is noted. However, the council structure has maintained galactic peace for 3 millennia. Changes to such a stable system would be reckless. The Quartzian representative's crystalline body flashed with calculated patterns. Humans have indeed provided useful services, but this does not warrant fundamental changes to galactic governance. Your species has been with us for merely 150 years. Some of us have maintained civilization for thousands. Sarah felt her diplomatic composure slipping. Useful services? We saved your homeworld. And we are grateful. The Quartzian replied smoothly. But gratitude does not equal political power. Young species must learn patience. The Tiderunner delegate's aquatic voice bubbled through his translator. Perhaps humans would be more content with expanded cultural exchange programs. We could arrange for more human students to visit our educational facilities. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. Cultural exchange programs. As if humanity's greatest minds were children needing basic education from their betters. She pulled up another holographic display, this one showing military statistics. Let me remind this council of recent events. The border wars with the hegemony nearly devastated 3 sectors until human tactical innovations turned the tide. The Void Pirate crisis was solved by human-developed tracking technology. The neutron star crisis was resolved by human physicists, who worked for 18 months without rest. She turned slowly, addressing each delegation in turn. Yet when the spoils were divided, when the credits were assigned, when the histories were written, somehow these became council achievements. Human contributions were footnotes, if mentioned at all. High Counselor Veltar's patience was wearing thin. Ambassador Chen, your accusations border on inappropriate. The council system ensures that all achievements benefit the greater galactic community. Individual species recognition is less important than collective progress. Individual species recognition? Sarah's voice rose. You mean human recognition? Because I noticed the Zephyrian history archives are very clear about Zephyrian achievements. Quartzian databases meticulously record Quartzian innovations, but human contributions somehow become anonymous council breakthroughs. The hive mind representatives' chittering intensified. Humans display concerning individualistic tendencies. Perhaps this is why your species struggles with true integration. That was the final straw. Sarah had endured 150 years of condescension, exploitation, and systematic erasure of human achievements. She had watched her people give everything to this alliance, while being treated as useful servants rather than equal partners. Integration? She said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You want to discuss integration? Let me share some data the council might find interesting. New holograms appeared, showing infrastructure schematics and maintenance schedules. 67% of the galaxy's communication network runs on human-designed protocols. 73% of interstellar shipping uses human logistics systems. 81% of the Council's military victories in the past 50 years relied on human tactical analysis. The chamber grew quieter as delegates began to pay attention to the specific numbers. The atmospheric processors on 47 worlds use human-modified designs. The quantum computing systems that run galactic banking, human innovations, the medical protocols that have extended average lifespans across 12 species, developed by human researchers. Sarah paused, letting the scope of human integration into galactic civilization sink in. But here's the most interesting statistic of all. In the past year, humans have submitted 2,947 requests for policy changes, resource allocations, and diplomatic considerations. The Council approved exactly 12 of them. She closed the holographic displays and faced the elevated platforms. Directly, 12 out of nearly 3,000 requests from a species that maintains the majority of your infrastructure and has saved this galaxy from destruction multiple times. High Counselor Veltar's voice carried an edge of warning. Ambassador Chen, these statistics lack context. The Council must consider the broader implications of all decisions. You're right, Sarah said, reaching into her briefcase. Context is everything. So let me provide some context that might clarify humanity's position. She withdrew a simple document, its physical form stark against the chamber's high-tech environment. This is humanity's formal notice of withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all human personnel will be recalled from Council facilities. All human-designed systems will be transferred to Council control. All human colonies, will declare independence and establish their own governmental structures. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the constant background hum of the station system seemed to pause. You cannot be serious. The Quartzian delegate finally managed. This is clearly an emotional response to perceived slights. Your species would not survive outside council protection. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Perceived slights? 3 hours ago, this council voted to relocate 7 human colonies to make room for Zephyrian expansion. Colonies that have existed for over a century. Millions of humans told to abandon their homes because another species wants their territory. She held up the document. That was the context we needed. After 150 years of faithful service, humanity's reward is to be displaced like inconvenient furniture. Well, no more. High Counselor Veltar rose from his platform, his tall form radiating authority. The Council does not accept this withdrawal. Your species cannot simply abandon its responsibilities to galactic civilization. Watch us, Sarah replied. Within 30 days, every human will be gone from Council space. You'll have your territories, your expanded colonies, your pure galactic civilization free from troublesome human individualism. She began walking toward the chamber's exit, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. At the doorway, she turned back one final time. You wanted to discuss context, Counselor Veltar. Here's some context for you. In 30 days, you'll discover what this galaxy looks like without human maintenance, human innovation, and human problem-solving. I hope you find it everything you dreamed it would be. The massive doors sealed behind her with a soft hiss, leaving the Council to contemplate the true meaning of the word indispensable. The reckoning. The evacuation began at dawn on New Geneva, humanity's oldest colony outside the Sol system. Transport ships descended from orbit like mechanical angels, their cargo bays empty and waiting. Captain Maria Santos watched from the command bridge of the heavy lifter Prometheus as streams of people moved through the spaceport below. Everyone was calm, organized, purposeful. Humans had always been good at logistics. Status report, she called to her communications officer. 17 colony worlds are proceeding on schedule, Captain. The industrial stations report complete. Evacuation within 23 hours. Research facilities are downloading critical data while wiping Council-accessible systems. Maria nodded. Humanity wasn't abandoning their knowledge, but they were ensuring the Council couldn't access it either. Every human-designed system was being modified. Every database encrypted with codes only humans possessed. If the galaxy wanted independence from human involvement, they would have it completely. On Kepler Station, Dr. James Wright supervised the shutdown of the galaxy's primary medical research facility. For 40 years, this station had developed treatments for dozens of species, cures for genetic disorders and vaccines for emerging plagues. The alien staff watched in confusion as human researchers packed their equipment and deleted their files. Dr. Wright called Dr. Zenith, a Quartzian researcher whose crystalline structure flickered with distress patterns. Surely you cannot mean to abandon the cancer research? We are weeks away from a breakthrough that could save millions of lives. James paused in his packing. The cancer in question affected only non-human species, a cruel genetic legacy of ancient evolution. Human researchers had volunteered to study it because their biological immunity gave them unique insights. The breakthrough was achieved yesterday, James replied quietly. The data has been transmitted to the human medical archives. If the Council wants access to the cure, they can request it through proper diplomatic channels with the new human independent territories. Dr. Zenith's patterns shifted to confusion. But there are no diplomatic channels. The Council severed all relationships with your species. Exactly. James sealed his final crate and walked toward the shuttle bay. Funny how that works, isn't it? Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds and stations. Human engineers shut down the quantum communication relays they had installed and maintained. Human logistics coordinators deleted the shipping algorithms that moved goods between star systems. Human technicians powered down the atmospheric processors that kept dozens of worlds habitable. The first crisis struck just 6 days after the exodus began. The Zephyrian merchant vessel Wind Dancer sent out a distress call in the Vega sector. Pirates had attacked the lightly armed cargo ship, overwhelming its defenses and preparing to board. Under normal circumstances, the distress call would have reached the nearest patrol station within minutes. Human-designed communication protocols would have automatically routed the signal to the closest response ships, calculating optimal interception courses and arrival times. Instead, the signal bounced randomly through an increasingly chaotic communication network. By the time it reached a council patrol, the Wind Dancer was a drifting wreck and its crew was dead. High Counselor Veltar stood in the emergency command center on Unity Station, watching status displays that showed a rapidly deteriorating situation. Red warning lights indicated system failures across 17 sectors. Communication delays that had been measured in seconds now took hours. Supply shipments were arriving at wrong destinations or not at all. "Report," he demanded. Commander Kethrall, a massive reptilian from the Titan species, consulted his datapad. 14 separate system failures in the past 48 hours, Counselor. The quantum communication array is operating at 37% efficiency. 3 major shipping routes have been suspended due to navigation errors. The medical supply chain to the outer territories has completely collapsed. Veltar's elegant features betrayed no emotion, but inside he was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. "What about our technical teams? Surely our engineers can restore these systems." "That's complicated, sir. Most of the technical documentation was written by human specialists. Our engineers understand the basic operations, but the maintenance protocols, the diagnostic procedures, the optimization algorithms..." Kethrall's voice trailed off. "The humans didn't just operate these systems, sir. They designed them from the ground up." The first major disaster struck 2 weeks later. The atmospheric processor on Titan's Reach, a colony world housing 40 million Zephyrians, began producing toxic gases instead of breathable atmosphere. The malfunction should have been caught by automated safety systems that would shut down the processor and engage emergency protocols. The safety systems had been designed by human engineers who understood both the technical specifications and the unique atmospheric requirements of different species. The automated diagnostics that should have prevented the disaster were too complex for non-human technicians to maintain properly. By the time Council engineers figured out how to manually shut down the processor, 12,000 colonists had died from atmospheric poisoning. The economic collapse followed swiftly. Interstellar commerce depended on precise timing, optimal routing, and sophisticated logistical coordination. Human-developed algorithms had managed the flow of goods between hundreds of worlds, calculating supply and demand, adjusting for seasonal variations, and optimizing shipping schedules. Without these systems, trade ground to a halt. Raw materials piled up on producer worlds while manufacturing centers ran short of supplies. Food shipments spoiled in transit due to routing errors. Critical medical supplies were stranded at distribution centers whose computer systems could no longer calculate delivery priorities. The Quartzian Trade Federation, which had once controlled 30% of galactic commerce, reported losses of 8 billion credits in the first month. Their crystalline homeworld, which imported 90% of its food from agricultural colonies, began experiencing shortages that threatened social stability. 3 weeks after the human exodus, the galaxy faced its greatest external threat in centuries. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from the void between galaxies. The Devourers had returned. The Devourers were an ancient enemy, a species that consumed entire worlds to fuel their endless expansion. They had been driven back 3 centuries ago through a coordinated defense that required perfect timing, innovative tactics, and technological superiority. Admiral Thanerock of the Titan Defense Fleet studied the tactical displays with growing dread. 2,000 Devourer ships were approaching the galaxy's outer rim, their massive forms bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Strategic analysis?" he asked his tactical officer. The young Zephyrian's voice wavered with uncertainty. "Using historical battle data, we estimate a 67% chance of successful defense if we employ the Chen maneuver combined with quantum torpedo saturation." Admiral Thanerock's massive head turned slowly. "The Chen maneuver?" "Yes, sir. developed by Admiral Sarah Chen during the Void War. It requires precise coordination between 17 different ship classes, with timing accurate to within 0.3 seconds across multiple star systems. The Admiral stared at the tactical display. The Chen maneuver was humanity's greatest military contribution to galactic defense, a brilliant strategy that used gravitational physics and coordinated fleet movements to create devastating tactical advantages. It had saved the galaxy multiple times. It had also been designed by humans for humans, using human understanding of three-dimensional combat physics and intuitive tactical decision-making. Do we have the technical specifications for implementing this maneuver? The tactical officer consulted his database. Basic parameters are available, sir. But the real-time coordination protocols, the adaptive decision trees, the emergency contingencies. He looked up helplessly. Admiral Chen classified those as intuitive command decisions in her reports. There are no detailed instructions. Admiral Thanerock understood. Human military genius didn't come from superior technology or overwhelming force. It came from their ability to think creatively under pressure, to adapt instantly to changing circumstances, to make intuitive leaps that pure logic couldn't achieve. The Devourer fleet would arrive in 48 hours. The galaxy's greatest military strategists were human, and every human had left Council space. Desperate times called for desperate measures. High Counselor Veltar authorized something that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. Secret diplomatic contact with the human independent territories. The message was transmitted through encrypted channels to avoid public knowledge of the Council's desperation. It reached President Sarah Chen, formerly Ambassador Sarah Chen, at the new human capital of New Earth. Counselor Veltar, Sarah's image appeared on the secure communication screen in her presidential office. How unexpected to hear from you. I thought the Council had severed all diplomatic relations with humanity. Veltar's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of strain. President Chen, the galaxy faces an existential threat. The Devourers have returned in force. We require assistance. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying the alien leader who had dismissed her people so casually just months before. Assistance? I'm afraid I don't understand. The Council voted, quite clearly, that humanity was no longer needed in galactic affairs. The situation has evolved, has it? Sarah activated her own displays, showing real-time data feeds from across the galaxy. Let me see. Communication networks failing, supply chains collapsed, atmospheric processors malfunctioning, military coordination compromised, and now an external threat that requires the tactical innovations you've spent months trying to replicate. She smiled, but there was no cruelty in it. Counselor, humanity isn't interested in revenge. We're building our own civilization, our own territories, our own future. We've moved beyond needing the Council's approval or inclusion. Veltar's elegant features tightened. 40 billion sentient beings will die if the Devourer fleet isn't stopped. You're right, Sarah said seriously, and that's a tragedy that could have been prevented if the Council had maintained cooperative relationships with its most innovative military strategists. She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. However, humanity has never been able to stand by while innocents suffer, regardless of how poorly we've been treated. We'll provide technical assistance and strategic consultation, but under specific conditions. Name them. First, formal recognition of the human independent territories as an equal sovereign power. Second, reparations for the relocated colonies. Third, technology sharing agreements that give humans equal access to all Council research facilities. Sarah leaned forward. And fourth, a public apology acknowledging humanity's contributions to galactic civilization over the past 150 years. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Everything Sarah demanded represented a complete reversal of the Council's position, but with 40 billion lives hanging in the balance, pride was a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. Agreed. The Battle of the Outer Rim became legendary, though its true nature remained classified for decades. Human tactical coordinators worked around the clock, adapting the Chen maneuver for mixed-species fleets and training alien commanders in techniques they had never imagined. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Devourer fleet was scattered and broken, their survivors fleeing back to the void. The galaxy was safe, but the cost had been enormous. 6 months later, President Sarah Chen stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council as an equal representative of humanity. The chamber had been redesigned with ground-level speaking areas, symbolically ending the elevated platform system that had reinforced species hierarchy. The galaxy has learned many painful lessons this year, she told the assembled delegates. We've discovered that true cooperation cannot be built on condescension and exploitation. We've learned that every species brings unique value to our shared civilization. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had once dismissed humanity as inferior. But most importantly, we've learned that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned, and once lost, it can only be regained through genuine partnership and mutual recognition. The Galactic Cooperation Accords were signed that day, establishing new principles for interspecies relations based on equality, mutual benefit, and shared responsibility. The galaxy entered a new age of genuine cooperation, built on the hard-learned, understanding that true strength comes from valuing every partner's contributions. Humanity had not sought to dominate or control. They had simply wanted to be recognized for what they truly were, indispensable partners in the grand project of galactic civilization. The universe was vast and full of challenges, but now at least, they would face them together as equals.